Inspiring call revealed. Amazing black girl discovers billionaire's son unconscious on pavement. Zoe's breath caught in her throat as she stumbled upon the scene. Jason, sprawled out on the pavement, a cruel twist of fate that tugged at the threads of her own life. Just moments ago, she thought she had some semblance of control, hurrying home from her cleaning job, exhaustion clinging to her limbs. But now everything shifted. An alarm rang louder than the sirens approaching. She knelt beside him, pulse racing, grappling with a tidal wave of empathy and an undercurrent of fear. What did this mean for her? Who was she to touch the realms of someone like him? Crouching low, she fumbled for her phone, heart thudding as she dialed 911. In her mind, images of her siblings flitted by, reminding her of the responsibility resting on her shoulders. She could already hear her mother's voice admonishing her, "You can't save everyone, Zoe." But what if she didn't at least try? When Jason's eyes fluttered open, disorientation painted across his face, the weight of worlds pressed down on her. He was the billion-dollar heir, a ghost from a world she could only dream of. Yet in this moment, he felt vulnerable, fragile. The contrast gnawed at her, each question he encoded multiplexing in the air without an answer. Why had she taken this risk? "Who are you?" he muttered, blinking up at her. His voice was raw, revealing the polished sheen of his upbringing was as much a burden as her own daily grind. She wanted to tell him her name meant strength, resilience, and a longing to break into Sophia University, the shimmering ivy on the hill just out of reach. Instead, she told him the truth. She was just a girl who worked too hard and dreamed too big. As they awaited the sirens, their quiet conversations peeled away the layers of expectation. Zoe listened intently to his world, a life beyond anything she had known, yet thick with demands she couldn't fathom. "They don't really know me," he confessed, and the words struck a chord within her. The demands of status, reputation, and family that weighed on him were mirrored in her struggle for acknowledgement, the facade of stability constructed over years of caretaking. Yet, with each disclosure, Zoe felt the distance between their lives shrink just a fraction, an ember of understanding sparking between them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But tension soared with the looming presence of Jason's family. Days later, whispers circulated amongst the glittering elite, urging Jason to bury the episode under their fiscal rug of reputation and privilege. "It's not the fallout that matters, it's the perception," his mother insisted, her laugh a brittle thing. Zoe felt repulsed. This was not a secret shame, it was a moment of raw humanity that demanded acknowledgement. And yet, a spark of trepidation ignited within her. Was she brave enough to lean into this confrontation with the weight of her values against the crushing force of influence? Each day turned into an anxiety-ridden balance between her autonomy and the pressures paralyzing Jason. The more she learned, the more they both felt trapped. He revered her strength while wrestling with his family's relentless power. In the eye of the storm, Zoe questioned whether the connection she longed for could withstand the societal frameworks threatening to pull them apart. With every shared moment, the possibilities of love and personal truth ignited a fire of hope within her. Yet trepidation loomed larger. Could she risk everything for a bond destined to challenge the very fabric of their worlds? Just as she gathered the courage to confront both her fears and theirs, a shocking revelation unfolded. one that doused her resolve with ice-cold uncertainty, leaving her teetering on the precipice of a decision that could alter both of their lives forever. Zoe's mind raced through scenarios, each one darker than the last, as she faced the weight of Jason's family's expectations curling around them like a suffocating blanket. How could she navigate these choppy waters without losing herself? She had witnessed the lavish lives of the elite, and yet their glittering facades always felt more like chains than wings. The more she pondered, the more she realized that both she and Jason were similarly ensnared by their respective worlds. Days blurred together in a haze of anxiety. Each morning she awoke, heart pounding with the dread of what awaited her. Was she merely a piece in someone else's game? Given how they had brushed off Jason's collapse, she couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were meaningless unless bound by status or cash flow. Zoe recoiled at the thought, and yet Jason's struggles made her question how much of her identity was rooted in the struggle for survival. Yet, amidst the chaos, she knew one thing for sure. She had to confront Jason about their burgeoning connection. There was something raw between them, a tether born not only from shared vulnerability, but from a profound understanding of the facades they presented to the world. As she prepared for that conversation, the fluttering in her stomach was a mixture of dread and anticipation. On a chilly Tuesday night, Zoe found herself pacing outside a local cafe where she had arranged to meet Jason. She wore a simple yet elegant dress she'd purchased from a thrift shop, its soft fabric reminding her of the tenacity woven into its seams. As the wind bit at her skin, she found herself wishing she were back in the familiar territory of her childhood home, where the stakes felt lower, the weight of the world less burdensome. When Jason finally arrived, the kind of uncertainty swirling in his once calm demeanor struck her as strikingly familiar. It was the reflection of both their realities laid bare. He arrived wearing a tailored jacket, but the way he held himself, tentative and cautious, contrasted sharply with the polished image he projected. They settled into a booth, the fluorescent lights morphing their surroundings into a stark contrast to the warmth radiating between them. "Zoe," he began, running a hand through his tousled hair, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. He faltered, sadness creeping into his voice. "I can't go back to pretending everything is fine." "Then don't," she replied, surprised by the strength of her own resolve. "What's the point of wearing a mask that doesn't fit?" In that exchange, Zoe found reassurance within herself. This was not merely about confronting Jason's privilege or his family's expectations. It was about both of them defining their identities against a backdrop of oppression and expectation. But how? Sparking that vulnerability, Zoe unveiled details of her own life. The layers of caretaking that had defined her being. The daily grind that dulled her aspirations. She spoke of her dreams for Sophia University not just as an institution, but as a lighthouse guiding her through the fog of doubt. With each revelation, she felt like she was chiseling away at the walls surrounding them. Yet with intimacy, unease seeped in. Jason's dark blue eyes scanned hers, searching for answers in the depths of her honesty. "But what can we do?" he pressed, trepidation gnawing at his words. "We come from such different worlds. My family will never—" "Why do we have to accept what they think?" Zoe countered, her heart pounding, not just in resistance, but from a budding realization. Maybe acceptance would come if they fought against the barriers together. The importance of that moment hung in the air like an unlit fuse, ready to explode. But just as clarity sparked in Zoe's mind, she heard the unmistakable sound of laughter approaching. Mocking, socialite laughter that clung to the night air like a shroud of snobbery. Zoe's pulse quickened as she turned to see familiar faces, the kind of faces that made her skin crawl. A group of affluent girls from Jason's social sphere, draped in designer attire, their laughter echoing disapproval. Instinctively, she clutched her fork tightly, repressing her fear. Jason's gaze shot toward her, his expression laden with concern. Before she could voice her thoughts, the group approached, leering at them with curiosity coated in disdain. Suddenly, the fragile connection she had felt with Jason felt threatened, and her earlier resolve wobbled. Would this be the moment that tore them apart before they even had a chance to forge their own path? "Looks like someone's moved up in the world," one girl sneered, her eyes scanning Zoe disdainfully. It was an outbreak of judgment threatening to dismantle everything they had begun to build. Zoe clenched her jaw, aware that this encounter could redefine not only her standing with Jason, but the essence of who she saw herself to be. She felt the choice looming before her. Would she shrink back into the shadows, or confront this new threat with the fire she'd ignited within? As Jason met her gaze, she knew the answer had to come from both of them. Would the power of their connection prevail against the judgments of others, or were they already destined to unravel? The moment hung, silent and taut, brimming with unspoken potential. Zoe felt time slow, an eternity wrapped around the moment as the laughter subsided into a taunting silence. The faces before her twisted into caricatures of disapproval. Their polished nails and designer bags betrayed the emptiness within. She clenched her jaw, a palpable tension gathered in her stomach, a storm brewing within. "Don't let them get to you," Jason whispered, his voice shaky yet filled with an anchor of support. But discomfort coiled around Zoe like a tightening noose. Did he believe that mere words could shield her from this relentless judgment? "Why should we care about what they think?" Zoe replied, surprising herself with the fierce edge in her tone. Each word felt like a deliberate strike against the norms she had battled against her entire life. In the glint of Jason's eyes, she noticed a flicker of admiration, something that pulled at her determination. The girls exchanged glances, surprise mingled with disbelief. "Oh, honey," the ringleader smirked, stepping closer, her presence a looming shadow. "Do you really think you can change anything? You're just not one of us." Zoe's heart raced. The words were stinging, but more than that, they were a harsh reminder of the chasm between them. She took a deep breath, trying to summon both her courage and creativity. Their laughter had never held her truth. It was time to reclaim her narrative. "I'm not trying to change anyone but myself," she said, standing her ground, a trembling resolve grounding her feet. "Your world might be glittering, but it's hollow. I understand the value of true connections. I have fought my entire life for the right to be myself, and I won't let your fear dictate who I am." The air crackled with intensity as Jason's hand subtly intertwined with hers. Every doubt that had previously pervaded her mind began to dissolve, replaced with the sheer force of affirmation. Zoe was tired of fitting into molds that didn't reflect her essence. Each word cut against the fabric of expectation, unraveling it thread by thread. The snickers faded, and what remained was a stillness like uncharted territory. She risked a glance at Jason, whose expression had transformed into one of unwavering support. His solidarity washed over her like a wave, fortifying her spirit even further. One girl stepped back, a subtle shift revealing her discomfort. "Wow, do you really think you belong here?" she challenged, as if testing a fragile resolve. "Belonging isn't determined by wealth or status," Zoe shot back, refusing to back down. "It's about authenticity, and I would rather be real than miserable." In that moment, Zoe realized her understanding of belonging was evolving. This wasn't just about a clash of social circles, but rather a question of self-identity and resistance. The profound understanding she shared with Jason, ignited by their vulnerability, spurred her on. She saw the world not simply as a battleground, but an opportunity for transformation, both inwardly for herself and outwardly for Jason. With a striking clarity, she made a decision. It was time to stop hiding, not only from the judgments of others, but from her potential. She felt the embers of purpose flicker within her, revealing the contours of a life yet to be lived, beyond the suffocating expectations that had governed her. "Let's go." Zoe pulled Jason toward the exit, an unexpected surge of confidence guiding her. They navigated past the stunned group, who remained speechless, caught off guard. With each step, Zoe felt lighter, shed of the weight they had attempted to enfold her in. Stepping into the cool night air, she took a deep breath, filling her lungs with resolve. She felt Jason's presence close beside her, a silent pact forming, a declaration that they were both willing to redefine their identities together, untethered by expectations or superficial judgments. "Where do we go?" Jason asked, a newfound glimmer in his blue depths. "Anywhere that feels like us," Zoe replied, and, in that moment, the world expanded with possibility. But as they walked toward the unknown, whispers from the cafe lingered behind them, ominous echoes that hinted not everyone would welcome their newfound defiance. The foundations of their connection were solid, but what challenges lay ahead? Zoe's heart raced with anticipation. With every step into the night, fresh doubts clawed at her confidence, offering a cruel foreshadowing of the struggles that awaited. What would it cost them to forge their own path amidst the constellations of privilege and disdain? As they turned the corner, her thoughts swirled, an unmistakable truth dawning. This was just the beginning. Zoe's mind raced as they walked through the dimly lit streets. Each step felt charged with the residue of what she had just faced, the confrontation behind her amplifying her sense of resolve. The cool breeze bit her cheeks, but it did little to temper the heat rising in her chest. "What if," she began, her voice trailing off as doubt crept in, "what if we just make it worse by challenging them? What if we're just setting ourselves up for more rejection?" Jason, sensing her hesitation, squeezed her hand. "We already took a stance, Zoe. There's no going back to the shadows. What does it feel like to stand for yourself?" His words danced in her mind, igniting a curiosity that veered into self-reflection. Maybe this was her moment, not just of defiance, but of deeper self-awareness. Until now, Zoe had played small, fitting into the role dictated by the expectations of others. But every interaction, every taunt, and every glance had chiseled away layers that no longer served her. As they reached an open plaza, the quiet chatter of a nearby group of friends filtered through the air. Laughter rang out, yet it felt distant, contrasting with the realization dawning on her: belonging could be redefined on her terms. A flicker of inspiration surged through her. What if, instead of simply distancing herself from the elite circle, she engaged more deeply with others to create authentic connections? "Let's sit," she suggested, pointing to a bench illuminated under an old lamppost. He nodded, and they settled, the atmosphere shifting as they embraced the newfound peace that came with their departure. "Thinking about anything in particular?" Jason asked, his eyes intent on her face. Zoe mulled over her next words carefully. "I want to strengthen the connections that are real, not just superficial. I can start a project, like an art initiative or a community event, something where people can express themselves freely." Excitement washed over her as her initial idea morphed into a vision. She wouldn't just be responding to judgment, she could proactively craft her narrative through creativity. "I see value in helping others share their stories. Aren't there countless people who feel like they don't fit in? Maybe they need a voice, an outlet. A platform to thrive on," Jason added, enthusiasm evident in his tone. "That's a remarkable way to shift focus from what you're running from to what you can create." Zoe pondered his remark, her mind racing through memories of her own struggles. Art as a medium had always resonated with her. It was expressive and cathartic. But could she transform her passion into a meaningful project? With each thought, the bold strokes of her plan grew clearer. Yet a nagging worry lingered. Could she pull this off? The self-doubt reared its head again, a familiar adversary whispering that she would likely fail. Where would she get support? Who would even care? "Let's get started tomorrow," Zoe declared, her voice steadying as determination culminated in her chest. Each commitment to her vision began fortifying her belief in herself. No more waiting for the perfect moment. If I want to do this, the time is now. "Count me in," Jason said, enthusiasm palpable, anchoring her. "I'll help any way I can. We can be the change we want to see." Zoe smiled, buoyed by his confidence. They shared a vision, a spark igniting between them, pulling them ever closer to the future that lay ahead. But as the thrill of their new endeavor captivated her, doubts lingered in the periphery. What if those who had ridiculed her turned their scorn toward her ambitious plans? With every ounce of excitement came the chill of potential opposition. Her thoughts spiraled, questions blooming like shadows. How would she navigate this new path, especially when the weight of judgment threatened to become a constant companion? As they stood to leave, Zoe took a breath, feeling the reservation returning, but also a newfound strength beneath it. The battle for acceptance and belonging was far from over. Its source was now deeply rooted in her quest for authenticity. One step into the unknown awaited. Would she have what it took to face the critics again, armed with her passion and a fierce desire to redefine success on her own terms? A challenge lay before her, daunting yet electrifying. The night gathered around them, cloaking Zoe's resolve. Tomorrow would reveal the transformative possibilities ahead, but darkness lingered behind the thrill of ambition. Would she recognize the courage within herself, or would fear dictate her next move? Morning light filtered through the curtains, striking Zoe's face with a sharp reminder of the day ahead. She stared at the ceiling, replaying her decision over and over. The thrill of yesterday's conversation with Jason clashed with the gnawing anxiety that clawed at her gut. Could she truly turn her aspirations into reality without falling flat? Each breath she took felt heavier under the weight of potential rejection. Yet the flickering image of her initiative tugged at her heart, insisting she rise to the occasion. There was no turning back. Fueled by this internal battle, Zoe pulled herself from the bed, her mind racing with ideas about how to bring her vision to life. She grabbed a notebook and a pen before plopping down at the kitchen table. With every stroke of the pen, the ink released not just ideas, but also hopes, designing a space for others to feel heard. Yet, even as she jotted down plans for art workshops and community engagements, her thoughts darkened with doubt. What if nobody showed up? What if her art was ridiculed? Each question pushed against her resolve, and she could feel her breath quicken with uncertainty. "Zoe, you in there?" her mother's voice interrupted as she entered the kitchen, disturbing her thoughts. "You're up early, planning something big?" Zoe hesitated, balancing the urge to share her ambitions against the fear of being dismissed. Instead of responding, she gazed out the window, watching the world outside awaken. The sun-bathed houses were filled with lives untouched by the circuits of judgment she faced. She wondered if those lives could be touched by her work. "Yeah, just some sketches," she finally answered nonchalantly. "It's about connecting with people through art." Her mother walked closer, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Art can be powerful, Zoe. You know that. People need spaces where they feel they belong. But you also need to believe in what you're creating." Belief. The word hung in the air, a challenge and a beacon all at once. Zoe felt the weight of her gaze, she longed to banish the doubt that festered in her mind. I want to make an impact, but what if I fail? What if I'm just asking for more heartache? Every endeavor comes with risk, her mother replied. It takes courage to face what you fear, but without trying, you'll never know what could flourish. The conversation sparked a flicker within Zoe. Courage might not eliminate her fear, but it could guide her in navigating the obstacles ahead. She needed to harness this uncertainty into her plans instead of letting it cripple her. Determination radiated from her as she made a list of potential venues, reaching out to local galleries and community centers. The act of reaching out transformed her approach to action, making her fears palpable yet manageable. With each email she typed, anxiety morphed into empowerment. A sudden knock on the door broke her concentration. It was Jason, his brows raised in excitement. "Ready to get to work?" "Absolutely," she responded, heart racing with renewed energy. "I'm ready to make this happen. I've got a vision to share." As they gathered together to brainstorm, Zoe's confidence began to swell. Jason's infectious enthusiasm blended perfectly with her fervor, creating an alliance forged in shared ambition. Each idea they exchanged blossomed, constructing a framework for something meaningful. Yet even as they mapped out their plans, the specter of judgment loomed larger. What would others think? Would former classmates laugh at her attempts to break into a world filled with talent? As doubt tickled the back of her mind again, Jason's voice broke in. "Hey, remember where we started? You've come so far already. This is just the next step. Let's worry less about what they think and focus more on what we want to create." His words resonated with her, and she nodded. Here was the moment to suppress the internal dialogue that belittled her. Her initiative wouldn't just be an escape from the past. It would be a declaration of who she was and who she wanted to become. But moments of resolve are often fragile. As they continued their discussion, Zoe's heart raced with the thought of facing potential critics. Would she be able to confront them, especially if the echoes of mockery resurfaced? The foundation was laid, but each brick carried the weight of vulnerability. Did she have the strength to defend her newfound vision when opposition loomed closer? As the afternoon sun beamed through the window, Zoe's heart thrummed with anticipation. Tomorrow sparked a new chapter, but the prospect of conflict lingered. Would her courage outshine her fears, or would the shadows of doubt reclaim their territory? Zoe woke to the deafening silence of her own resolve breaking down the walls of uncertainty. The morning felt different, infused with anticipation, and every nerve in her body aligned toward action. She had summoned the courage to confront her fears, and now, armed with the notes glittering with potential brainstorming, she set out to initiate contact with a few venues that could host her workshops. Each email was a tightrope walk between vulnerability and ambition. She hovered over the send button, ridding herself of the intrusive thoughts that warned her of repercussions, overthinking every word written. But instead of hesitation, now she felt the bass of her heartbeat, a determined rhythm matching the dream she was desperate to coax into existence. After hitting send on the last email, Zoe stared at her screen, a mix of excitement and dread swirling within her. She was thrust into the unknown, stripped of her usual crutches that soothed her anxiety. This was no longer just an idea. It was tangible, raw, and vulnerable. She was exposing herself to potential rejection within the scope of public eyes that once echoed her fears. With no time for self-doubt, she picked up her paintbrush, letting colors spill onto the canvas of her small studio. The strokes felt more potent than ever. They became a protest against the echoes whispering she was not enough. The process was freeing, a conduit for channeling all that unsettled energy. Brush to canvas, she fortified her artistry with newfound defiance. Her phone buzzed on the table, jolting her from her creative trance. It was a response from one of the venues, a local gallery. A simple acknowledgement of her email triggered a kaleidoscope of emotions. They were intrigued. They wanted to meet. She felt another flicker of hope ignite. This was real. She was inches closer to realizing her dream. "I need to prepare," she muttered to herself, urgency coursing through her veins. Every detail, from her presentation to the artworks she would display, needed to resonate with clarity and passion. It became apparent that she needed to not only show her art, but articulate her vision with conviction. How could she convince others to support her if she wasn't even convinced herself? Asserting her ambitions meant delving deeper into her own story. Zoe was not just a creator. She was a voice grappling with experiences and emotions that could resonate with others. She thought of the brave souls that had crossed paths with her, those struggling with their own stories, wishing for an escape. What could she say that would speak to them? With a quilt of ideas forming, Zoe transitioned between painting and deep reflection. She looked closely at each created piece, pulling inspiration from her life's brushstrokes. The loneliness, the passion, the fear, and triumph entwined in each hue. They were more than mere colors. They represented a cumulative journey, and as she prepared to verbalize her vision, she felt herself shifting from abstract artist to a storyteller. The sun dipped low, casting orange and pink hues across the canvas of her life. Each moment brimming with significance, Zoe's heartbeat synced with clarity of purpose. The meeting would occur soon, and she would not just share her art, she would share herself. Yet the inherent fear of judgment simmered below the surface. What if she misfired with her narrative? Would she blend in with the clamor of other artists? Or would her voice be distinct enough to leave an imprint? Murmurs of doubt crept in, and she clenched the paintbrush tighter, wielding it as both a weapon and a shield. This was more than artistic expression. It was a fight against invisibility, a way to reclaim her narrative from those who might seek to undermine it. As she stepped back, surveying both her canvas and her aspirations, a newfound sense of determination solidified within her. Tomorrow would be monumental. She stood poised on the edge of uncertainty, ready to leap. But then, as the evening shadows grew long, an unsettling thought struck her. Was she truly ready to embrace the fullness of her narrative if others might not understand it? With this looming uncertainty, she wrestled with the compelling question: what pieces of herself was she willing to reveal, and more importantly, what would it cost her? Zoe awoke the next morning with an unfamiliar blend of dread and excitement weaving through her. The previous day's creative fervor gave way to a tightening knot in her stomach as she prepared for her meeting. She glanced in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, a mix of determination and vulnerability that felt almost palpable. It was time to shape her narrative, to voice her story before an audience, and the thought both invigorated and terrified her. She gathered her collection of paintings, the vibrant swirls and emotive strokes that represented her personal evolution. Each piece told a part of her story, one that bore the weight of her struggles and the light of her triumphs. But practicality weighed heavy on her mind. Was it enough? Would they see what she saw? As she arranged each canvas, she could hear the undercurrent of her doubts unspooling in the back of her mind, punctuating her efforts with questions about worthiness and impact. While the sun struggled to break through the clouds, Zoe grabbed her notebook and pen, the tactile act a grounding ritual. Writing down her thoughts, her hopes, and even her fears made them less daunting. She began outlining the points she wanted to convey: her artistic journey, the inspiration behind her work, and her ultimate goal of fostering connection through art. Her handwriting was erratic, filled with crossed-out lines and arrows directing her thoughts, but amid the chaos emerged clarity. She needed to resonate with her audience not just as an artist, but as a person unveiling her truth. After hours of preparation, Zoe dressed deliberately. donning a deep blue dress that complemented the hues of her paintings. It was bold, yet understated, mirroring what she wanted to project, a confident vulnerability. As she stood in front of the door, ready to venture into the unknown, she could feel the weight of her heart in her throat. Every step felt monumental, each one pulling her closer to the gateway of her aspirations, yet further from the comfort of anonymity. Arriving at the gallery, Zoe was greeted by an eclectic mix of artists and patrons, the air buzzing with the creativity of countless stories and dreams. Took a steadying breath, allowing herself a moment to savor the atmosphere, letting it invigorate her soul. But as she approached the designated meeting room, the reality of engaging others began to feel heavier than the anticipation of sharing her art. The walls echoed with the potential promises of acceptance and the looming shadows of rejection. When she entered the room, 2 gallery representatives were seated, their expressions open and inviting. Zoe's heartbeat quickened. This was the moment where her narrative would either take flight or falter. As introductions were made, she felt the familiar flutter of insecurity slip in. They greeted her warmly, expressing genuine enthusiasm about her concept. Their receptiveness provided a brief reprieve from her anxiety, and for a moment, Zoe allowed herself to envision success. Yet as she settled into her presentation, the weight of expectation carved new doubts into her psyche. What if words failed her? What if they questioned her depth? She began speaking, but the frigid air carried a lingering worry. What if her vision didn't align with theirs? Zoe paused mid-sentence, her breath hitching as uncertainty cascaded over her like shadows. The story she was ready to tell felt like a patchwork of dreams tangled with fear. A tension tightened in her chest, and for a brief minute her confidence faltered. But as she glanced at her paintings around the room, they seemed to whisper back at her, reminding her of the strength carried within each brushstroke. "Why am I here?" she thought, grappling with the emotional surge. "It's more than just art. It's about connection." With newfound bravery, she leaned into the silence, letting it stretch, before speaking from a place of authenticity. Just as she poured her heart into the narrative, the passion, the struggle, and the vision, someone in the corner cleared their throat, and all her confidence was replaced by the icy grip of fear again. They were interrupting her story, probing with a hesitant but firm inquiry that cut straight to her core. What if they don't see me, Zoe wondered, on the edge of vulnerability, but refusing to pull back. The moment felt suspended, a knife's edge where possibilities unfolded or shattered. How she chose to respond would mark the turning point of this pivotal encounter. Zoe hesitated at the threshold of confrontation, the potential intensity of the dialogue lingering palpably. Would she continue to fight for her voice, or would the weight of judgment pin her back into silence? The next words held the power to shift everything, challenge everything, and deep inside, Zoe braced herself for what was about to unfold. The moment stretched, a silence cradling her uncertainty. Zoe's heart raced as she wrestled with the question posed. It hung in the air, a pendulum swinging between vulnerability and defiance. She realized she stood at a crossroads. A choice lay ahead that could forge her character further or bind her to the quiet shadows from which she had long sought to escape. Zoe's gaze fell on the painting titled Whispers of the Soul. It depicted a tumultuous sea under a bold, star-studded sky. It represented her navigation through internal conflict, her journey toward finding a voice amidst the chaos. This was not merely a meeting. It was her chance to share the essence of who she was as both an artist and a human. Drawing on that inspiration, Zoe inhaled deeply, allowing the weight of the moment to solidify her resolve. She could feel her fingers twitching at her side as they itched to grasp something. Her notebook, perhaps, or a brush, anything that felt solid in such an uncertain instant. Instead, she opted to ground herself in clarity, letting the silence stretch just a beat longer. "Yes, I suppose a lot is riding on this," she finally articulated, a steadiness emerging in her voice that belied the tempest inside. "But it's not just about the art or what you see in it. It's about the feelings behind it, the connections, the stories I hope to evoke in others. My art is my way of speaking. I want it to engage, to provoke thought and emotion, a conversation beyond mere aesthetics." A flicker of intrigue ignited in the representative's eyes, but the pressure of the moment still loomed large. One of them leaned slightly forward, not probing or challenging, but inviting, creating space for her truth to emerge. "Then how does each piece encapsulate a different part of your experience?" The question held care, drawing Zoe out, awakening a desire to share her depth. For a heartbeat, Zoe hesitated again, not from fear, but from the realization of how much she had to share. She began with the painting that had evoked the strongest response within her. "This one," she said, pointing to a canvas ablaze with fiery reds and soft blues, "represents my struggle with imposter syndrome. Each brushstroke captures the battle between who I believe I am and who I want to be. I poured all my fears of inadequacy into it, but also my hope for something greater." As she navigated through her collection, Zoe felt a liberation blooming within her. The initial tremors of trepidation started to fade, replaced by clarity as she spoke about the motivations behind her work. Engaging her audience, she shifted to moments of vulnerability, weaving tales of rejection and the relentless pursuit of acceptance that had plagued her artistic journey. Words flowed, revealing the essence of not just her art, but the vibrant spirit that now demanded to be acknowledged. The representatives nodded, affirming her narrative. With each passing moment, Zoe felt the weight of their gaze change. It was no longer scrutinizing, but rather a genuine appreciation unfolding. Triumph surged through her. She was not merely placing her dreams on display, she was embodying them, radiating resilience. Yet just as Zoe found her stride, she could sense a shift in the room, a tightening of their focus that hinted at deeper inquiry. The representative who had initially posed the question cleared his throat again, his brow slightly furrowed. "But do you think your journey resonates beyond your personal struggle? What about the context of your audience? Will they connect?" The question struck her with unexpected force, a gust of wind that could easily redirect her course. Did she only speak of personal experience, or could she transcend it, allowing her artistry to touch lives in a way that transcended individual boundaries? An air battle ignited, a fire against the creeping doubt. The urgency to connect ignited something primal within her, and with newfound clarity, she realized it wasn't merely about her story. It was about offering a glimpse into the human condition, the myriad emotions that comprise the tapestry of existence. Zoe paused, waiting for a moment to let this realization settle in the air. This was more than art. It was a bridge, a thread connecting lives and experiences. Taking a deep breath, she prepared to respond, to anchor her answer in authenticity and a larger narrative. But before she could speak, an unexpected sound erupted from the hallway, jolting everyone's attention. In that instant, as Zoe faced the unknown once more, she understood that the path ahead promised to challenge her even further. Would she be able to embrace the unexpected twists of fate? Would she find the courage to reclaim her narrative amidst the noise? With that in mind, Zoe stood poised for transformation, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The sudden noise pulled Zoe from her meditation on the moment. A sharp rattle echoed through the space, the kind that demanded immediate attention. Her heart skipped instinctively. The weight of the representative's expectant gazes felt heavier than before. She had momentarily left behind a fragment of her truth, but now she was jolted back, the urgency stirring a resolve that she hadn't realized was building inside her. As the representatives exchanged concerned glances, Zoe stood rooted, pulse quickening. The crash morphed from noise into an unyielding tension that gripped her throat, demanding action. She finally broke the invisible tether pulling her backward. "Excuse me," she said with surprising confidence, her voice steady despite the disarray. The words felt like stepping stones on unsteady ground. She stepped towards the doorway, her heart beating in sync with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Zoe was not just an artist at that moment. She was a potential witness, a vessel for empathy and connection to those around her. That realization, scintillating and terrifying, nudged her onward. What awaited outside would test her emerging understanding of purpose and vulnerability. She pushed open the heavy door, nearly colliding with a visibly shocked young man sprawled on the pavement just beyond the threshold. His face was pale, and confusion flickered in his wide eyes, the aftermath of whatever had brought him to this precipice. By instinct, Zoe knelt beside him, her artist's instincts no longer confined to the canvas. Observing every detail, she noted the resolution of panic swirling within him. Here was a soul tangled in its own complexities, right outside her world of artistic expression. "Are you okay?" she found herself asking, her voice softer now, filled with concern instead of the turmoil that had occupied her moments before. She could feel a connection knitting between them, the immediacy of his need echoing the desire she had just articulated to the representatives. Was she not also seeking connection through her art, her own narrative pivoting towards something more profound than her insecurities? He blinked rapidly, overwhelmed yet struggling to gain composure. I got a little dizzy and it was just too much." His words spilled slowly, drawing her closer into the reality of his struggle. Unwavering, Zoe placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Suddenly, the stakes of her artistic intentions crystallized before her. She was intertwining her journey with another's narrative, an infinite loop of understanding. The selfish thoughts about her painted canvases faded. In this moment, she was not simply an artist. She was a person who could enact change, who could extend a bridge from one life to another with an act of kindness. But just as quickly as the clarity washed over her, a familiar hesitation crept in. Would she recognize this connection in the world she had been yearning to touch through her art? Realization crashed upon her again. She had to face this hesitation. It was now or never. As her own voice of doubt threatened to surface, Zoe pushed it down. "What's your name?" she asked, grounding him in this shared moment. "Rylan," he replied, the clarity returning to his expression as he processed her sincerity. Zoe felt her pulse steady, recognizing the beauty of beginnings, both for her and for Rylan. This wasn't just about her journey, lives intermingled, giving rise to shared art in real time, raw and unfiltered. Would she seize this transformational thread and weave it into her work, or let it slip back into chaos? As they exchanged a glance laden with unspoken stories, she realized the road ahead would not merely be about depicting feelings in paint. It would demand her to dive deeper into human connection, to capture the rough edges of life, where vulnerability thrived. Zoe drew a shaky breath, excited by the promise of her unfolding narrative, eager to delve into this fresh beginning. But before she could gather her thoughts to forge a way forward, the sound of hurried footsteps rustled behind her, pulling her attention back to her previous reality. Could she truly embrace this newfound understanding while circling back to the expectations of her artistic journey? Fading footsteps beckoned her back, and the weight of uncertainty settled like a fog. Revisiting her artistic path would demand courage she had yet to fully embrace. Zoe found herself caught yet again between two lives, straddling the unknown, sensing that an even greater challenge lay ahead. Would she dare to confront it? Zoe stepped back into the gallery, the vibrant buzz of her aspirations mingling with the unfolding reality around her. Riley's presence faded momentarily, yet the impact of their encounter struck a chord deep within her. As she returned to the representatives, the atmosphere shifted, crackling with the energy of newfound purpose. She could no longer merely represent herself. Her narrative had woven itself into a larger tapestry of stories, and it was time to embrace that truth fully. The representatives regarded her expectantly, and she felt a wave of clarity wash over her. "I'm sorry for the interruption," Zoe began, her voice steadying with each word. "But that moment outside reminded me of the reason I'm here. Art isn't just about me, it's about the connections I want to create and the stories I hope to evoke." Their eyes widened with intrigue as she spoke passionately of vulnerability, community, and the transformative power of artistic expression. She articulated how she wanted to create a space for genuine connection through her workshops, an inclusive environment where people could share their narratives and explore their vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. With every sentence, Zoe felt her insecurities begin to dissolve, replaced by the conviction burgeoning within her. "Art should resonate with real experiences," she stated unequivocally. "It should invite healing and understanding. We are all intertwined by the threads of our journeys, and I want my work to reflect that." The representatives exchanged knowing glances. Their initial curiosity shifted to genuine admiration. She could sense their perception evolving, and her heart raced with encouragement. One of them smiled, leaning forward. "Your story and vision are powerful, Zoe. It reflects authenticity and a commitment to create change. It's exactly what we look for in our exhibitions." A surge of exhilaration flooded through her. "I want to start with local artists and facilitators. Let's build something that promotes inclusivity and expression," she urged, her voice unwavering. Each piece exhibited could reflect the struggles and triumphs of different narratives, merging them into a cohesive experience. "I want to break the idea of elitism tied to art. It should resonate with everyone, not just the privileged few." They nodded, captivated by her fervor. Zoe spoke as if her words alone could transform the apprehensions that had clung to her for so long. The energy in the room transitioned, each representative leaning in, hungry to hear more. It was a testament to how far she had come, a vivid contrast to the self-doubt that had once silenced her. "Let's discuss how we can collaborate on your vision," one representative suggested, their enthusiasm mirrored in Zoe's heart. She felt the shift happening, not just in their perception, but within herself. Gone were the doubts that had unnerved her. She had conquered them, one resolute moment at a time. Before she left the meeting, they discussed logistics, planning their next steps. As she stepped out of the gallery, Zoe's spirit lifted, fueled by the momentum of what lay ahead. She had transformed a potential instance of fear into an embrace of possibility. It wasn't just about displaying her art. This was a revolution in how art could be perceived, held, and shared. Walking through the streets, her gaze fell upon Rylan, who had now risen to his feet. He stood there, apprehensively scanning the crowd. As their eyes met, an understanding flickered between them. Two souls, navigating their struggles and finding strength in vulnerability. "Ryland," she called, approaching him with renewed energy. "I just met with the gallery. We are going to create something amazing that highlights narratives, including yours if you want." His eyes widened with surprise, then softened into a smile. "Really? You'd want me included?" "Absolutely," Zoe replied, her confidence radiating warmth. "We all have stories worth telling. You inspired me today. It's time for our voices to be heard, and I can't do it without you." Her heart swelled as she realized how far she had come from the hesitant girl she used to be. The sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the sky, illuminating the next chapter before her. Together they would forge a pathway toward authenticity, a canvas that welcomed true expression. Zoe felt an undeniable connection knitting itself between their journeys, a recognition that ignited hope for many others. In this moment, she had achieved something profound, actualizing her aspirations, transforming vulnerability into triumph, and committing to a purpose that transcended her artistry. Her fears no longer had control. They transformed into fuel, propelling her forward into a future she had crafted with intention. As they walked side by side, Zoe felt the thrill of what lay ahead, a transformative endeavor that would challenge perceptions and elevate their collective voices. No longer did she seek validation. She now stood strong in her identity, ready to embrace every moment of the journey ahead. With a buoyant heart and an unwavering spirit, she crossed the threshold into a promising future. Zoe had not only claimed her narrative, but had also transformed it into a collective legacy of courage and authenticity, one brushstroke at a time. And she vowed never to look back. You need to subscribe now to witness these incredible stories unfold. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep us thriving. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a reminder that transformation begins within.